Guadalcanal, October 25, 1942. Night falls like a curtain of black velvet over the ridge, heavy with the scent of rotting leaves and distant cordite. The jungle presses in from all sides, a living wall of vines and shadows that hides everything beyond 20 yards. In shallow foxholes scraped from red clay, a thin line of exhausted Marines huddle around their machine guns, cigarettes glowing like fireflies in the gloom. Henderson Field lies just behind them, a muddy airstrip lit by flickering oil drums, the fragile heartbeat of America's first offensive in the Pacific. Lose this ridge tonight, and the field falls. Lose the field, and Guadalcanal is lost. Lose Guadalcanal, and the war takes a darker turn. One man sits a little straighter than the others, his hands steady on the cooling jacket of a Browning .30 caliber machine gun. Platoon Sergeant Mitchell Paige, 23 years old, from Charleroi, Pennsylvania. He wipes sweat from his brow, not from fear, but from the relentless humidity that turns every breath into a steam bath. His platoon, 30 men strong just days ago, now mans 5 heavy guns covering 100 yards of front. They are the anchor. If they break, the line unravels. Paige knows this. Every Marine knows this. But as the crickets fall silent and the jungle holds its breath, none of them know what's coming, not yet. He wasn't born to this. Back in Pennsylvania coal country, Mitchell Paige grew up in a family of Serbian immigrants who knew hard work as the only path forward. His father, a steelworker, taught him that duty wasn't a word for speeches. It was showing up when the shift started, rain or shine. Young Mitch delivered newspapers before dawn, boxed in local gyms, dreamed of something bigger than the mill smoke hanging over the Monongahela Valley. The Great Depression bit hard there. Jobs vanished like morning fog. But Paige had a fire in him, the kind that doesn't flicker. At 18, he walked into a Marine recruiting office, not for glory, but because the cause promised purpose. Semper Fi, they said. Always faithful. He signed the paper without hesitation. Little did he know, it would lead him here, to this godforsaken ridge, facing an enemy that fought like demons from the dark. Paris Island came first, the island, they called it, a crucible of sand fleas, drill instructors, and endless rifle drills. Paige thrived there, not as the loudest shouter, but as the one who never quit. You don't break the man. He's debarked during a night march. You find out if he's already broken. Paige wasn't. Quantico followed, where he learned the Browning M1917 inside out, how to strip it blindfolded, how an overheated barrel warped under sustained fire, how one gun could stop a company if placed right. Machine gunners weren't heroes in the stories. They were the backbone, the ones who turned human waves into windrows of the dead. Pearl Harbor hit while he was stateside. December 7, 1941. The world changed overnight. Paige shipped out with the 1st Marine Division, bound for the Pacific, where Japan's empire stretched like a shadow from Tokyo to the Solomons. Guadalcanal would be their test, his test. The voyage across the Pacific was a slow boil of anticipation and boredom. Paige stood at the rail of the troopship, watching the endless blue horizon, the salt spray mixing with the sweat on his neck. Rumors swirled below decks. Japan had the run of the ocean, their carriers sinking anything that moved. The 1st Marine Division, America's first real offensive force, was green but tough, forged from depression-hardened boys who knew hunger and disappointment better than most. They drilled on deck, stripped weapons in the stifling engine heat, swapped stories of girlfriends left behind. Paige kept to himself mostly, checking ammo crates, sketching fields of fire in his head. When Guadalcanal appeared on the horizon, a green smear under thunderheads, he felt the shift. This wasn't training. This was the edge. August 7, 1942. The landings hit beaches guarded by coconut palms and hidden Japanese snipers. Paige's platoon splashed ashore under naval gunfire, the jungle alive with echoes of the first firefights. Tulagi, WW2, Florida Island, bloody prologues to the main event. Then Guadalcanal itself, where the Marines seized Henderson Field from a stunned garrison, only to face the full weight of the Imperial Japanese Army pouring in from Rabaul. The island became a meat grinder. By October, Paige's world was mud up to his knees, rations of cold sea rations spoiled by heat, and the constant whine of askers, Japanese fighters strafing the field at dawn. Malaria took more men than bullets. Dysentery turned foxholes into latrines. Nights brought washing machine Charlie, lone bombers dropping eggs to keep everyone awake. Paige's machine gun section dug in on a ridge southeast of the airfield. Guns zeroed on grassy clearings, where patrols said the enemy probed. They named it Paige's Ridge, unofficially. It stuck. Life settled into a brutal rhythm. Dawn patrols into kunai grass tall as a man, hacking trails with machetes, ears straining for the click of a bolt. Daytime brought Japanese artillery -95mm guns from across Sealark Channel, walking shells across the perimeter in deliberate patterns. Paige learned to read the whine. High meant safe, low meant dive. His platoon rotated watches, 2 hours on, catnapping in the heat. Letters from home arrived yellowed and months old. His mother's scrawl about ration stamps, his sister's high school graduation. He wrote back sparse replies. Still kicking dirt. Weather fine. No need to describe the dead Japanese rotting in no man's land, faces swollen black under the sun, or the corpsman who lost an arm to a knee mortar. Camrad shaft held them together. There was Kid Malone from Alabama, barely 19, who sang off-key hymns to steady his nerves. Old man Kowalski, 30 to going on 60, who fixed jammed guns with a cigarette lighter. And Jenkins, the Joker, who swore he'd open a bar in Philly after the war. Paige kept them focused. Eyes on your sector. Ammo counts, barrels clean. They trusted him. He made them feel unbreakable. By mid-October, the air thickened with warning. Patrols dragged back wounded, whispering of troop movements in the Matanikau River Valley. Japanese pose, rare prizes, spilled details under interrogation. Colonel Kiyono Ichiki's regiment, reinforced, probing for weakness. Henderson Field was the prize, hold it, and Cactus Air Force could bomb rebel runs. Lose it, and the slot became a Japanese highway. Paige's Ridge covered a key approach, open ground funneling into the perimeter. Intelligence pegged the attack for the 23rd. It didn't come. Nerves frayed. Then the 25th. Runners from Division HQ, faces grim. Full regiment inbound, bonsai tonight. No retreat. Paige walked his line at dusk, tapping shoulders, meeting eyes. We hold, that's the job. Marines don't bend. Sunset bled red over Ironbottom Sound, where sunken ships marked naval clashes. Distant thunder rumbled, not weather, but big naval guns offshore. The Slot Express was running hot. Paige checked his watch. 2,200 hours. Jungle silent to silent. It started with rustles, like wind through kunai, but no wind. Branches cracked, low voices, guttural Japanese. Paige tensed, hand raised. Steady, then the jungle vomited shadows. Helmets glinting, bayonets low, 100 strong in loose skirmish lines, a whistle shrilled. Bonsai, the cry ripped the night, raw and fanatical, as the first wave charged, rifles cracking, grenades arcing black against the stars. Fire, Paige yelled. His Browning thundered first, tracers stitching the front rank, mowing shadows into heaps. The ridge awoke in muzzle fire, 5 guns hammering, brass raining golden into mud. Japanese staggered, some rising to lob Chi-Yu grenades that burst in red fireballs, shrapnel whining. Malone's gun shattered left flank, Kowalski swept right. Jenkins yelled, "They're bunching." Paige traversed his barrel, short bursts cooking off rounds at 500 a minute. Bodies piled in the grass, but more surged. Second wave, officers waving katanas, screaming troops behind. Chaos reigned. A grenade caught Jenkins' pit. He slumped silent. Malone took shrapnel in the leg, screaming as blood soaked his trousers. Paige's runner darted up, left guns out, jam. Down the line, Kowalski's crew dragged a hit man rearward, gun cooling black. Japanese exploited gaps, figures silhouetted closing to 50 yards. Paige grabbed a belt, sprinted low through whipping fire. "Cover me." His gun crew poured lead. He hit the silent position, cleared the jam one-handed, fed brass, fired. The weapon bucked alive, illusion intact, a full platoon roaring defiance. Back he went, gun to gun, sweat stinging eyes, lungs burning. Third wave hit harder, mortar probing rear. Paige's world narrowed, recoil jolt, enemy screams, the copper reek of hot metal. Alone now, effectively. Platoon whittled to ghosts. He became the line. Japanese halted, faltered, fire slackening as dawn grayed the east. Dawn crept over the ridge, a reluctant witness, turning the black chaos into stark revelation. The Japanese assault, which had slammed into Paige's position with the fury of 1,000 men, now sputtered against the unyielding fire he'd kept alive single-handedly. But they weren't broken yet. Officers in the rear barked orders through megaphones, their voices hoarse from the night's frenzy. Fresh waves formed in the jungle shadows, silhouettes reforming, bayonets fixed, determined to crack this stubborn spine of Marines. Paige, mud-caked and breathless, wiped blood, not his own, from his face, and traversed his Browning one last time. The barrel glowed cherry red. He swapped it out with hands that barely felt the heat. "Keep 'em coming," he muttered to no one. The illusion held. From the enemy's view, the ridge bristled with guns, a wall of death they couldn't breach. Then the turning point, as the third wave crested the Kenai grass, stumbling over their own dead. Paige saw the shift. Reinforcements trickled up from the rear, surviving riflemen from adjacent platoons, corpsmen with bandages, even a few officers with Thompson submachine guns. They saw him, the lone figure darting between positions, feeding belts, clearing stoppages, his rifle slung across his back like an afterthought. "Paige, you crazy son of a, get down," one yelled, but there was awe in it. No time for talk. The Japanese close to grenade range, 30 yards, faces visible now in a half-light, young, fanatical, some wounded, but pressing on. A knee mortar round airburst overhead, showering shrapnel. Paige dove, came up firing. His gun chattered defiance, tracers pinning the point men. That's when he made the call, fix bayonets, up and at 'em. No orders from above, no bugle call, just raw instinct. Marines rallied around him, steel sliding home with metallic snicks. Paige grabbed his M1 Garand, checked the clip, and surged forward from the foxholes. Not a charge in the movies, all flags and glory. No, this was gritty, personal. Small groups leapt into the smoke, stabbing, clubbing, screaming back the bonsai. Paige led the point, bayonet thrusting into the chest of a charging lieutenant whose katana whistled wide. The man gurgled, fell. Paige yanked free, pivoted to fire point-blank into another. Beside him, a corporal bayoneted a grenadier. Behind, Malone, leg bandaged, hobbled forward, swinging his entrenching tool like an axe. The counterattack rolled downhill, avalanche. Japanese discipline cracked. Survivors turned, fleeing into the jungle as Marine fire lashed their backs. Paige pushed until resistance crumbled, until the ridge was cleared yard by yard. He halted the men at the tree line, pistols out, scanning for snipers. Silence fell, broken only by the moans of wounded and the crackle of burning grass. Henderson Field secure. The line held. Morning light revealed the toll. The ridge was a slaughter pen, hundreds of Japanese bodies strewn across the field of fire, twisted in death, rifles clutched like talismans. Paige's platoon, once 30 strong, lay shattered. 16 killed outright, most of the rest wounded. Empty ammo crates yawned like graves, machine guns smoked, barrels warped. Corpsmen moved methodically, tagging the dead, stabilizing the living. Paige knelt by Jenkins, closing his eyes, whispering a curse at the unfairness. Kowalski survived, arm shattered, grinning through pain. You held us, Sarge, held the whole damn line. Word spread fast up the chain. Division HQ buzzing with reports. One sergeant manned 5 guns alone, stopped a regiment cold. Captains wrote citations at afternoon, ink smudged with sweat. Paige's actions distilled into terse prose, when his platoon was rendered ineffective by casualties. Platoon Sergeant Paige moved from gun to gun, maintaining a volume of fire that deceived the enemy. It climbed the ladder, regiment, division, corps, to Admiral Nimitz himself. November 1942, Washington. The Navy Cross pinned on his chest, later upgraded. But the Medal of Honor came later, presented by President Roosevelt in a White House ceremony, gold star gleaming against his utilities. Photographers flashed, dignitaries clapped. Paige stood straight, said little. Inside, it felt hollow. The medal couldn't bring back Malone or Jenkins. The war machine ground on. Paige shipped to stateside training commands, then back to the Pacific, Cape Gloucester, Peleliu's Blood Reefs, Okinawa's Shuri Caves. He rose to colonel, a career Marine, but Guadalcanal marked him deepest. Post-war, he retired quietly to California, worked defense contracting, spoke at VFW halls to fading crowds. No blockbuster books, no HBO series. His story faded into archives, overshadowed by flashier tales, Bossilone Sandpiper Gauntlet, Puller's Frozen Chosen. Why? The Pacific grind lacked Europe's moral clarity. Machine gunners weren't poster boys like flag raisers. Paige didn't chase spotlight. He embodied the Corps' ethos, do the job, fade away. Yet whispers persisted among Marines. At reunions, old-timers raised glasses to Paige's ridge, the night one man falled a regiment. Historians nodded in monographs. Guadalcanal tore point to the overgrown crest. His medal citation endures, chiseled in stone at Arlington. But popular memory, selective, in a war of icons, some heroes stay shadowed, not forgotten, just not sold. Consider this, heroism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the sergeant in the mud, gun after gun, holding illusion against reality. Mitchell Paige didn't save the world that night, He saved a ridge. That ridge saved an airfield. That airfield saved an island. That island saved a campaign. Ripples from one man's stand. They tried to hide it, not malice, but time's indifference. Now, we pull it back into light, because stories like his remind us, wars turn on unbreakable wills, not just admirals' maps. On Guadalcanal, one Marine proved it. The first rays of sun pierced the smoke haze like accusatory fingers, illuminating a landscape straight out of hell. Paige stood at the edge of his shattered foxholes, chest heaving, the acrid tang of spent powder and blood thick in his nostrils. The ridge, once a neat line of interlocking fields of fire, now looked like a butcher's yard. Machine guns lay twisted, barrels drooping from heat stress, empty belts tangled like serpents in the red mud. Ammo crates gaped empty, their contents chewed up in the night's frenzy. Bodies carpeted the slope below. Japanese soldiers sprawled in ungainly heaps, some clutching rifles still, others curled fetal as if asleep. Hundreds of them, faces frozen in final grimaces, uniforms shredded by .30 caliber fury. Paige's tracers had turned the kunai grass into a pyre, wisps of smoke curling from blackened patches. He moved slowly among his platoon, steeling himself for the count. Jenkins lay where he'd fallen, grenade shrapnel carving a red ruin of his chest. Paige knelt, closed his eyes with dirt-caked fingers, whispered something to Lowe for the wine to carry. Malone groaned from a shell hole, leg tourniqueted by a belt, face pale as milk. "Made it, Sarge," he rasped. Paige nodded, gripping his shoulder. "You all did what counted." Kowalski sat propped against his gun, arm mangled, lighting a cigarette with his good hand. "They came like ants, boss. Thought we were done. 16 dead Marines, boys from farms and factories, marked the price." Corpsmen darted between them, morphine syrettes glinting, tags fluttering from toes. The air hummed with flies already, the jungle reclaiming its due. Henderson Field droned behind, dauntless dive bombers revving for another run on the slot. The airfield lived. The line had held, but victory tasted like ash. Runners from battalion arrived by mid-morning, faces streaked with fatigue, notebooks out. Sergeant Paige. "Brass wants details." He recounted it flat. Guns silenced one by one, runs between positions, bayonet charge at dawn, no embellishment. They scribbled furiously, casualty figures, enemy estimated at battalion strength, ammo expended. Word rocketed up. One NCO manned the entire gun line solo. Deceived regiment-scale assault. Marines from adjacent units clapped his back as they passed, muttering "crazy bastard" with grins. Puller himself, Chesty, the legend, or sent a runner later. "Damn fine work, Paige. Marines like you in islands." Paige shrugged it off. "Helping stack bodies for burial details. No time for heroes. Malaria waited for no man." By noon, the ridge was patched, fresh guns emplaced, wounded choppered to the Canal Hospital ship. Paige lit his own smoke, staring at the jungle fringe. They'd be back, but not today. Reports flowed uphill at river water after rain. Battalion S3 tallied. Paige's sector absorbed the main thrust of the 17th Army's probe. 200+ enemy dead against 16 Marine Kia. Regimental after action. Platoon Sergeant Paige's initiative critical to perimeter integrity. Division G3 wired MacArthur's HQ. Single individual action repelled coordinated bombseye. Preserved Henderson Field. Cables crackled to New Mayal. Then Pearl. Then Washington. Navy brass pored over maps, nodding. Nimitz pinned the Navy Cross first. gold anchor gleaming on Paige's utilities in a dusty ceremony under palms. But it escalated. Roosevelt staff reviewed citations. The Navy Board chewed it over. Extraordinary gallantry. Above and beyond. Medal of Honor. November 1943. Rose Garden. Paige in dress blues. Potters gripping his hand. Flash bulbs popped. Newsreels spun. Guadalcanal hero. Headlines faded fast. War churned on. Bigger names emerging. Paige felt the disconnect sharp. The medal was parchment and gold. Words like intrepid and indomitable dressing up mud and screams. He'd manned guns because comrades couldn't. Charged because stopping meant death. No speeches came natural. At the ceremony, he mumbled thank you, sir, eyes on his shoes. Reporters hounded. How'd it feel, facing hundreds alone? He shrugged, did my job. Back to the cause, no parades. The citation lived in archives, etched on brass plaques, but public memory skimmed it. Guadalcanal was the victory disease, tough, but no Iwo Jima flag. Machine gunners didn't pose photogenic, they hunkered, anonymous. War pulled Paige onward, no rest for the ridge holder. Cape Gloucester swamps, Peleliu's bloody beaches, Umurbragal pockets chewing divisions. Okinawa's hell, Shuri line meat grinder, Comacor's shredding picket ships. He climbed ranks a lieutenant, captain, major, training greenhorns on Brownings, drilling hold the line into recruits. VJ Day found him stateside, chest heavy with ribbons. Post-war, colonel by Korea's armistice, Pentagon desk pushing logistics. Retired 56, La Jolla son, defense consulting, quiet VFW speeches to thinning crowds. Wife, kids, grandkids, normalcy he earned. Interviews rare, he spoke facts, skipped gore. Men died holding that ridge, he'd say I just kept the guns hot. Guadalcanal haunted subtle. Nightmares of silent guns, waking sweat-soaked. Reunions bittersweet, fewer faces yearly. Marines toasted Paige's stand, but civilians blanked. No Spielberg epic, no Hanks narration. Pacific vets faded behind Europe's blitz glamour. Paige passed 2003, age 84, full honors, Arlington caisson, rifles cracking salute. Obituaries noted the medal, obits skimmed. Legacy in cause law, Quantico ranges bear his name. Guadalcanal tore whisper at the ridge crest, now vine-choked. One man's night rippled, airfield held, island kept, campaign turned. But fame, elusive, they didn't hide it, time buried it under flashier tales. In the grand tapestry of World War II legends, Mitchell Paige's stand occupies a quiet corner, one known to marine historians and Guadalcanal buffs, but overlooked by the Hollywood spotlights that bathed other heroes. Think of John Barcelone, the machine gunner legend of Guadalcanal's earlier nights, whose fiery defense became HBO's The Pacific centerpiece, complete with Tom Hanks' narration and Emmy sweeps. Or Chesty Puller himself, the indomitable colonel barking orders through hellfire, forever etched in Corps mythology with statues and endless toasts. Even Iwo Jima's flag raisers, 6 nameless Marines turned national icons, by Joe Rosenthal's lens, spawned books, films, and endless retellings. Paige's ridge defense, every bit as pivotal, faded into footnotes. Why? The machinery of memory is selective, ruthless. Pacific War stories lacked Europe's clean moral arc. No Normandy beaches storming toward Berlin. No concentration camp liberations sealing righteous fury. Guadalcanal was a slog. 6 months of malaria, naval duels in Ironbottom Sound, and attritional ridge fights, where victories measured in yards, not headlines. Machine gunners like Paige didn't pose heroically atop bunkers. They hunkered in mud, faces obscured by gun smoke, their work invisible until the body count tallied. No single decisive moment photo captured his solo gun runs, just after action reports, dry as dust, buried in declassified archives. Post-war, Paige shunned the spotlight. No ghost-written memoirs, no paid speaking tour. "I did my duty," he'd say, deflecting mix. Contrast that with Barcelona, who parlayed fame into bombs drives before shipping back to Iwo, where he died, cementing mythos. Paige lived long, quietly, longevity dulled drama. Media mechanisms played their part too. War films favored Europe, Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, visceral, character-driven epics drawing box office. Pacific Tales, The Thin Red Line experimented with poetry. Windtalkers flopped. Guadalcanal got guys in the jungle. A B-movie footnote. Publishers chase sexy narratives, kamikaze dives, atomic blasts, not a sergeant's night of ammo belts and bayonets. Even Marine Corps peer prioritized puller-types, larger-than-life leaders over the NCOs, who literally held lines. Time-eroded witnesses. By Vietnam, Guadalcanal vets were grandpas at VFWS, their tales competing with fresh horrors. Paige's citation gathered dust in Pentagon files, resurfacing occasionally in niche books, like Neptune's Inferno, or With the Old Breed. They didn't hide his story. Indifference did, the slow grind of collective forgetting where only the flashes survive. Yet shadows hold truths brighter lights miss. Paige embodied the unglamorous core of infantry war, not seeking glory, but delivering when systems failed. His actions rippled unseen. Ridge-held preserved Henderson Field's fighters, which sank Japanese cruisers in the slot, starving reinforcements, flipping Guadalcanal's momentum. Without that night's illusion of strength, the campaign crumbles. Tokyo's empire endures months longer. Island-hopping stalls. One man, 5 guns, hundreds deterred. That's leverage history undervalues. Pop culture's amnesia says more about us than him. We crave tidy heroes, not the gritty anchors who make tidy possible. Fade back to that ridge, October 26, 1942. Dawn breaking over spent brass and broken bodies, Paige lighting his last cigarette, staring into the jungle where shadows retreated. No fanfare, no newsreel crew, just the weight of survival and absence. 16 brothers gone, but the airfield hummed behind him, dauntless clawing skyward to bomb rubble. That ridge stood because one sergeant refused collapse. Multiply that by thousands. Anonymous stands across Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Peleliu, Pacific victories unseen scaffolding. Paige teaches vigilance over vanity. Courage isn't monologue bravado. It's quiet choice amid chaos. One more belt, one more traverse, one more push when legs scream quit. His legacy whispers in modern corps training. Quantico's Paige Range, where recruits zero Brownings under D-fire, learning hold or die. Guadalcanal tour pause at overgrown crestlines, guides recounting. Here, one Marine fought a regiment. Arlington's granite citation gleams eternal, visited by descendants tracing roots. But broader lesson, wars hinge on wills, not just weapons. Democracies falter when ordinary men break. Triumph when they don't. Paige, son of immigrants, Depression survivor, embodied that. Duty as default, no applause required. In our scroll-feed age of instant heroes, his shadow story grounds us. Real impact accrues in mud, not memes, They tried to hide it. No, we let it dim, prioritizing spectacle over substance. Now, pull it forward. Honor the ridge holders, gun runners, bayonet leaders, whose nights turn tides. Mitchell Paige didn't seek your memory, he earned it. Next time sirens wail or tensions flare, remember, campaigns pivot on unbreakable spines. One Marine proved it, Semper Fi. Fade to black on Henderson Field's dusty strip, propellers turning toward dawn.